I'm Dr. Tom Coates. I'm the director of the UCLA Center for World Health, and our motto is saving lives and improving health by investing in people. And you will understand as this panel evolves why we chose that motto, why we chose that mission. The world has indeed changed, and the world is indeed changing. Now, if I could do one of those word clouds, if I had the technology, I'm too old to be doing word clouds, but I have one in my head. And from the opening and from the panel last night, the word clouds would read population growth, economic growth, rules-based security, diplomacy. Nobody talked about health. And what we're going to try to present this morning is the central role that health plays in all of those things, in population growth, in the economy, in security, in people being happy with their governments. It's central. So the world has changed. The majority of the countries in the world today have life expectancy greater than 70 years of age. And if we just look at some selected countries in Asia, Japan has a life expectancy of 83 years, Singapore 82 years, China 75 years, 73 years for men and 80 for women, Thailand 75 years, Cambodia and Laos both have 71-year life expectancy. The Philippines 69 years, Laos 68 years, and Indonesia has 71 years, India 66 years, Myanmar, the newly democratic country now, has 65 years. Compare this to another middle-income economy, South Africa, where life expectancy is 56 years. And the reason that the sub-Saharan African countries did not keep up with other countries in the world was because they were so hard hit by HIV. South Africa has less than 1% of the world's population and yet 16% of the world's HIV infections. The Asian countries are spared that. Now, as countries evolve, as the economy grows better, there is an evolution. And in low-income economies, infectious diseases do take a terrible toll. Injury, trauma, traffic accidents, home accidents also take a terrible trauma. But as people live longer, it's the chronic diseases that begin to take over. Trust me, infectious diseases and trauma are much easier to take care of than chronic diseases. Think about it. If you've got high blood pressure, if you've got heart disease, if you've got cancer, it's a lifelong treatment, and it requires lifelong care. And then there are the other disabilities of aging that occur that require attention. Osteoporosis, cataracts, myriad things. So this requires a revolution in healthcare, not only in the acute care of people, not only in the primary care of people, also in tertiary care. So we at UCLA, with the 5th best hospital in the country, the 1st best hospital in the West Coast, we do very exotic care. We tailor cancer medicines to the cancer. Jimmy Carter is living longer because of immune-based therapy. Usually, malignant melanoma is a death sentence, especially when it metastasizes to the brain. He is alive because of advances in therapy. So as middle classes emerge in the Asian countries, they have expectations, number one, that their healthcare is going to be better, that their healthcare is going to be advanced, that their healthcare providers are going to be fully knowledgeable, and that primary care is going to be readily available. Again, UCLA has 150 offices spread throughout Los Angeles. Now, people in Los Angeles don't mind driving 2 hours to go 5 miles. We hate it. And that's why we're spread out. And the same thing is going to be true in Asia. Care is now centralized in the hospitals. It needs to spread out. But it's not only acute care. It's not only tertiary care. It's also preventive care. So if one looks at the risk factors for the major causes of death and disability in China, number one is dietary habits. Number two high blood pressure. Number 3, air pollution. Number 4, tobacco. 70% of Chinese men smoke tobacco. Alcohol and drug use, and high body mass index. That is a term to describe somebody's obesity. You might have heard about it this week when we were describing Mr. Trump's body mass index. So what we need to do then is revolutionize the way that healthcare is offered and the way that healthcare is delivered. The panel today, we're going to talk about the environment, which is a major risk factor for disease in China. We're going to talk about mental health. And the reason we're going to talk about mental health is because self-harm is a major cause of death in many Asian countries, particularly in China. And attending to mental health needs is crucial. And then we're going to talk about systems of care. I've asked each of the panelists to make introductory comments of about 5 minutes, and then we'll open for questions. Our first panelist is Mr. Wen Bo, who is a distinguished environmental activist. He was the program director for the National Geographic Air and Water Conservation Fund, the China coordinator for the Global Green Grants Fund, and China program director of the Pacific Environment. And he was a journalist at China Environment News, and he set up the Greenpeace office in Beijing. So, Mr. Bo, please.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for coming to this session, and good morning. I'm going to cover environmental aspect. According to Chinese traditional wisdom, people will not get sick. People only die in a natural cause because they are getting old. But why people get sick? Because they, the food they eat, the air and water, the air they breathe and water they drink. So those things that get them sick. So I'm going to talk about some pre-medical care issues because environment and human health are closely interrelated. This morning, the session talk about China economy. No matter how China economy looks like, it's developed rapidly. But think of China as a boxer, a wrestler. No matter how outfit is look, mighty. Something that gets this boxer wrestler sick. If that boxer have a cancer, then he will die. He will not be knocked out by his competitor, but he will die by its own disease. And the environment destruction in China is a cancer for its own country, for China. When we look at GDP growth, no matter at 5% annual growth or 7% annual growth, it didn't take into account of environment cost and the human health cost. If we take the environmental ecological cost into consideration, human health cost into consideration, it's very close to zero. Because that's have been accounted for. And then China is going to be paying, in future for all this cost. When look at environment in China, according to studies, 7 out of 10 most polluted cities are in China. And according to World Health Organization, it says air pollution is responsible for 3.3 million people, or the premature deaths of 3.3 million premature deaths every year. And the majority of them are actually East Asia, and of course, China have a big, East Asia it's probably the most accounted for. The premature deaths. There are in rural China, still up to today, there are nearly 200 million people cannot have access to safe drinking water. So in the West, in other developed countries, the people would like to have a riverside, residence. But if you are in rural China, if you happen to live in rural China, you are more likely to be very close to a cancer village because of the drinking water cannot guarantee the health. Soil contamination, overwhelming use of pesticides and other chemicals in the farmland have serious poison over farmland. So the food security is a serious issue, and you do see that the people from China, when they travel to Japan, to other countries, they buy milk powder for children, or for their relatives, or for their own children as well. So think of that. Although economic figure looks nice, but how many foreigners or expats do you want to permanently live in China? Very few. There are a huge number of Chinese population that want to move out of China. They want to be taken care of by Canadian government, when they get old. So you do see that the people, they make their own choice. You do see that where they want to move to, and where do they want to permanently settle down. And people make their own choice by looking at environmental quality in China and other quality of life issues. And looking back at health issues, there are the people, although they are very unsatisfied with the air and water quality in China, and we do have environmental hotline, but people do not. They show their anger, they show their concern, but people do not actually protest on this issue, because majority of people want to take a free ride. They want someone else to work on these issues, and then but there's one issue that people really pick up phone and make a call to this environmental hotline is the noise pollution, because it immediately impact their life. And then if they do not complain, then no one will complain for them. But you do see a lot of environmental protests, such as the PX, kind of chemical that's PM factory, if they happen to be announced as there's a plan to build a PX factory in Xiamen and in other Chinese cities, and the people did organize rally. The PX is one, and incinerator is another important case. That's the people actively organized demonstrations, and sometimes it can be very violent. So PX factory and incinerators, because the environmental and health consequences are very immediate, and also because the value of their own property will be reduced if so there are some personal interest. They're also quite much concerned over nuclear power station. If a nuclear power station is built, but most people's approach is on those not in my backyard approach. I just want to mention two other issues that does have a serious. Two other environmental issues does have a severe environmental health consequences, but have not be paid much attention. One is the marine issues. Marine pollution, because very type of form of diseases is found in human beings. They also are found in marine mammals. This is just evidence that how the pollutants and toxic ended up in ocean and ended up in marine life. And again, because China also started to consume a huge amount of fishery products, and then again have a huge impact on when it's into the food chain, and have a huge impact on human health. And last but not least is the die-hard tradition of consuming wildlife, especially in southern China, in Guangdong and Guangxi regions. If we look at those infected, a lot of infected diseases such as AIDS, SARS, and chicken flu, bird flu and all very type of infectious disease. It's all because of a close encounter of between human and this wildlife. And when Chinese consumer, I mean, particularly in southern China, when they consume very exotic species, so those viruses be hosted by other species, sometimes it jumps into human body, and it's you can imagine that someday some type of super virus can develop and spread fast among human population, and that would have a devastating impact. So the efforts of reducing poaching, consumption, and trade of many indigenous species are not only for saving biodiversity, but also for ensure the human society are not really impacted by a lot of viruses.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.